Fallout 3 is a very complex game that changed the series forever, which makes this a particularly hard video to make. You could say that this video is the Dark Souls of video. I wanna analyze Fallout 3 and how it's changed the saga, and for that this time we need a lot of context. Let's start with a history lesson. Open the books to page 216, late 90s. The 90s were, according to many, the golden age for computer RPGs, but the 2000s killed them forever. I've been doing some research and I'm not sure why, because apparently the people who bought Fallout 2 in 1988 were still alive in 2002 to theoretically buy Fallout 3, but it seems they weren't, that suddenly that niche wasn't making enough money. What seems to me to be the cause is that at that time the cool kids made and played 3D games and either you adapted or you died. Sega died trying to make a console that could make 2D games, the Sega Saturn, and great PC role-playing sagas died, like Ultima after its failed quote-unquote attempt to jump to 3D. 3D games cost a shitload of money and the profits had to be also a shitload to compensate, as any businessman with shark mentality will confirm. One simply could not afford to fail, and Interplay, SSI, Dreamforce, Westwood, and many more went bankrupt. Check the description if you want to investigate, there's a very cool book about RPG history. Valve did well with Counter-Strike and Half-Life, Blizzard did well with Diablo and StarCraft, but on the other side of the pond in the console market they were living a true golden age. The PlayStation and Nintendo 64 sold like crazy and brought a lot of new audiences to video games, who were able to enjoy some of the most important video games in history: Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Metal Gear Solid, Pokémon, and Final Fantasy VII. And the RPGs that sold well were the JRPGs, which came out, of course, on console. Console, that's where the money was. Imagine the following conversation. Hello, Tim Cain, creator of Fallout, how many units have you sold? Hello, Tetsuya Nomura, creator of the Zipper and Final Fantasy VII. Thanks for asking. Fallout has sold around 150,000 units. How about your Japanese RPG released on console the same year? Yes. And with the PlayStation second of its name, Queen of the Andals and the best-selling consoles, that was some kind of twisted joke. It was mandatory to release your games on console if you didn't wanna go bankrupt, as unfortunately Troika Games did, formed by the creators of Fallout. Troika tried to bid for the Fallout IP upon Interplay's descent, but Bethesda outbid them. I really wish this hadn't been the case. Thus, some companies adapted to the new status quo, as did BioWare and the aforementioned Bethesda. Bethesda's history is simple. They were going under, made Morrowind as a farewell, as a swan song, decided to release it on the original Xbox in 2002, sold 4 million copies in the next couple years and saved their company. Then they started making Oblivion, which would take 4 years to arrive, and to put another project in the oven in the meantime, they bought Fallout from a dying Interplay in 2004. In fact, so much so that Oblivion and Fallout 3 are siblings, to the point that the most common phrase to define the post-apocalyptic title has always been Oblivion with guns. This can be seen especially in its melee combat system, which is identical to that of Skyrim's daddy. But going back to the development of Fallout 3, Bethesda's core games were first-person, so it made sense for them to turn Fallout into this. Especially when the game that saved them from bankruptcy had this perspective as well. Fallout 3 came out in a horrible apocalyptic world where Call of Duty Modern Warfare had broken the market. Fallout always had guns, so making Fallout 3 as a first-person shooter was not only the best idea in order for the game to sell well, but it was also the most logical choice by far. The problem is that Fallout 3 comes out and it's a hybrid between two types of game that, up until then, yeah, games like Deus Ex had kinda combined them to great success, but I wouldn't necessarily say that mainstream public was used to these kinds of deeper systems embedded in their shooters. So two different audiences bought this game with radically different expectations. Shooter fans, who were the majority, did not know Fallout, they only came because they have been told that they could shoot at stuff. Many of them would discover the wonderful world of Fallout and role-playing games and even the fucking open world genre, but many others would encounter the worst shooter I've ever played in my life, with weapons that do not emit sounds upon firing, nor do they have the slightest recoil. They simply spawn bullets, materialize them at the end of the barrel, and the enemy's life bar is reduced. Here's the sentence in the video that I hope is the least controversial. Fallout 3's gameplay is a fucking mess, especially especially the combat. The other part I hate about Fallout 3's gameplay is that it takes place in a massive, incredibly large world and you have to traverse it like an old lady in a supermarket queue. You can't sprint. No, why would we take inspiration from that Call of Duty feature? No cars to drive, what are you, stupid? Why would we bring that mechanic from Fallout 2? We might as well copy its villain, MacGuffin, and the better part of the plot, but then have you walking forwards for hours on end doing nothing. By the way, this criticism applies exactly the same, or worse, to New Vegas. There is a kind of culture war here going on between Bethesda fans and Fallout purists, and although I am firmly in the second camp, there's a lot of things being said about Fallout 3 that also apply to New Vegas. Problematic features in both games that are only pointed out by the purists when discussing the former because of fanboyism, and I'd like to be fair-ish. Fairer. For example, Fallout 4's dialogues, which admittedly are not always Shakespeare, but we'll get to them in Fallout 4 video. The thing is that it's very easy to compare and criticize that in Fallout 4 you only have 4 options if you ignore all the times when the original games only gave you 1. And obviously the original games are awesome, it just pisses me off the harassment and the tearing down of Bethesda for things that are featured in the originals and New Vegas. It is because of the fallacious among the criticisms of Fallout 3 and 4 that I wanna dot the I's and be fair to the game, but I also wanna make it very clear that I am an RPG fan and not an open world fan. It's not even close. What's surprising is that even with all the odds stacked against them, I ended up enjoying somewhat Fallout 3 and enjoying a lot Fallout 4. Remember my perspective as an open world hater, sit back and enjoy the show. A lot of people complain about Fallout 3's intro, and frankly they're absolutely right. But for some reason they talk about the Vault 101 section when the first few hours of Fallout are not there, but here. This was fixed a couple years ago, but before that, when I played this in 2021, and I'm not kidding, I spent at least 3 hours to get the game to run on my computer. No, you need games for Windows, no, you need to register, no, you can't register, no, you can install some mods to avoid games for Windows, no, I'm afraid those mods don't work, no, but if you install another fucking installer, now it just works. After managing to boot up Fallout 3 without first ripping the skin off my face, I was able to play the fucking game. I started with the opening cinematic, getting my hopes up for the character I was going to play as I watched it. You know when I mentioned an old lady in a supermarket? Funnily enough, I was really looking forward to playing a sniper grandma in Fallout 3, but yeah, no.
What about you? What kind of person are you going to be?
In spite of that, I kinda love the childbirth section. The phrase Daddy Liam Neeson says, what kind of person are you gonna be? It's so tender and at the same time builds some expectation that you supposedly are playing a role-playing game where you're gonna be able to choose to be who you want, except you have to be 19 years old. And this ain't the best decision role-playing wise, but at the same time Bethesda does not do role-playing games, like at all. It's just that they used to conceal that fact a couple decades ago. But even though I would have liked my RPGs to be RPGs, I can understand and appreciate a video game company attempting to tell a story. Allow me to go in a tangent in order to reach the 10 minutes mark. The first 2 Fallouts are cool as hell. The thing is, I wouldn't say those games have a story per se. I mean, you're sent to get the MacGuffin, the item without which your people die, and you get it back by killing the bad guys. I'm not saying that's wrong, quite the contrary. However, I wouldn't call that a story. Take New Vegas, for example, which I insist my intention is not to praise 3 by insulting New Vegas. The story of New Vegas is that 2 factions are at war. And yes, you have the story about the guy who killed you and then you getting your revenge, but it's like only 2 scenes. The one where he kills you and the one where you kill him. Holy shit! And there might be a 3rd one where you find him at a crossroads in a certain place, you know, because he has crossed the wrong guy, you get it? If you ask me, it's clear as a sunny day that the first Fallouts and New Vegas have no story, but that's intentional, I believe. The more things the writers bring to the table, the less room the player has to make them up for themselves. There is a sweet spot here. Even the storyless Fallouts do have some constraints. I can't be a non-vault dweller in Fallout 1, nor can I not be Miss Mr. Death Stranding, Mr. Amazon delivery guy, delivering my packages for post-nuclear Jeff Bezos. And that's not a bad thing. There's a compromise to be made somewhere. At what extreme you have a Japanese role-playing game where the player doesn't play any role, doesn't have any decisions to make. This is why I say that JRPGs are not role-playing games, are not RPGs. The thing is that usually in exchange for taking away your freedom completely, those games offer you a story. But that's a double-edged sword, because if I can't choose shit and I'm gonna have to sit through your longest story better be good, better be goddamn Shakespeare, or I'll come down on you with my sledgehammer.
I came in like a rat.
And unfortunately, a lot of times those stories are awful. Good writers are hard to come by, in my humble opinion. And I'm not convinced they're at Bethesda, but we'll get to that. Back to the subject, writing a story is easy-ish. Writing 500,000, however, is not. So the New Vegas compromise is a reasonable one, where you have a lot of freedom but no narrative. But we're not here to talk about New Vegas. Yet. Ring the bell, champ. Fallout 3 tries to tell a story, and hey, I can respect that. After all, I do play narrative video games like Dear fucking Esther, Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, I tried to get involved in the main story of Fallout 3, as with every game in the saga. I went to hug my father.
I hugged my father!
As soon as I saw him, and I followed my dad forever until he left me.
You've got to get out of here. Your dad is gone and my father's men are looking for you.
Papa, are you near me? Papa, can you hear me? Papa, can you help me not be frightened?
By the way, the idea of involving your character creation phase with the toddler's sketchbook is awesome. A neat idea, very well executed. The main quest of Fallout 3 is about finding your father, but before I go on with the story, I wanna get Vault 101 out of the way because it's a tough nut to crack. The opening of Fallout 3 tries to do a lot of things. For starters, to teach you how to play. It also tries to endear you to your father and to the people in the shelter. It gives you a couple of small choices with the thugs and your friend Amata. You finish getting to know your character and your father leaves and everyone hates you now. This secondary character you saw for like 2 seconds is dead. Jonas, no! And now all the security guards want you dead too. And there is a plague of rat roaches for some reason. What, did they come in from outside the vault when your dad left? And why did the overseer kill Jonas? Why does he want to kill you? What the fuck does that solve? This guy is supposed to be the typical cold, calculating leader capable of committing atrocities for the greater good, like the president in Fallout 2 or like in the first Fallout, 2 of the best characters in the saga. And then you see on this computer this bullshit log about how the tunnel snakes are this rabbit dog and they have their usefulness and
Watch out for you. Wide load coming through. Gonna go cry to your daddy, fat ass? I can show you a real tunnel snake, Amata.
They're sucker brats, all they do is bully your daughter. My daughter. What use are they gonna be? They're not fucking Solid Snake. Tunnel snakes?
That's us. And we rule.
If you ask me, the Overseer is, I don't know, not the best instance of the Machiavellian archetype. The leader of the infamous tunnel snakes, Butch, asks you to rescue his mother since he's afraid to face the rat roaches. This encounter is very interesting because as your bully you may feel inclined to take revenge on him, but are you really willing to kill an innocent person because her son is an asshole when he also just apologized? Alternatively, you can convince Butch to solve his fucking problems on his own and to overcome his fears and defend his mother, or lie to him and convince him to run away, leaving his mother to die. Both using the speech skill. We'll talk about the fucking speech skill. Some say Fallout 3 has no decisions, especially no complex moral decisions. And I don't know, of course there are more complex moral dilemmas than letting an innocent die for revenge, but I don't know, it's not that bad for the first one in the game. Got a feeling if this exact interaction was in Fallout 2, those same people would hail it as a great example of a cool side quest and moral choice. I mean, let's keep it in mind, we're still in the tutorial. What moral decisions did you have in the tutorial of the first Fallouts? Whether to shoot a rat or stab it? I don't know. There's another criticism that you have to kill a lot of innocent guards who are just doing their job and literally were your friends a couple of hours ago. And yeah, it's a bit whatever, a bit strange, although I do understand that you can't populate your open worlds with 400,000 complicated characters, complex NPCs with which you can negotiate with. Actually, I feel like Bethesda tends to do just that, and as an aside, Wizards of the Coast do do as well when they write their Dungeons and Dragons adventures. They fill their worlds with thousands of empty names with no personality, no ambitions, no friends, no schedules, no history, no values, absolutely nothing. Just a name, and they expect that to be enough. This is not just me saying it. Todd Howard was saying a couple of years ago that his open worlds were gonna start getting smaller and denser. And apparently what he meant is to have an algorithm procedurally make thousands of empty fucking open worlds. Thanks, Bethesda. Cause yeah, it's better to have two good characters with whom you can have deep, meaningful interactions and conversations than 500 empty shells pretending to be characters. And when you do the latter, you can find yourself with conversations like, "Hey, what's up? Yeah, I have to go. Yeah, whatever." And makes you wonder why the fuck was this conversation included in the game. The beginning of Fallout 3 is long and it takes place in a closed environment in an open world video game. It's not as criminal as Skyrim's, but Skyrim's openings is one of the worst in the history of video games, in my humble opinion, for a replayable game. A lot of people replay Bethesda titles because they pretend that they are RPGs. Role-playing games, as a player, can be approached in two ways. One, you create an avatar which will represent you, the person sitting on the other side of the screen. You know, the one who's watching this video and subscribing to my channel right now. Through your avatar, you are the decision maker. 2. You create a character who is not you and will make decisions that you wouldn't make. That is, you play a role-playing game. And in my case, the role I have chosen to play is the bad guy. Duh. Because I knew the game accommodated evil playthroughs. So back to role-playing and games, I believe Bethesda's ones would benefit a lot from thinking about what kind of experience they are, because Fallout 3 and Skyrim's intro are fucking great the first time around, which frankly I think should be the only one. I don't see why anyone would replace Skyrim because every character is the goddamn same, and the only decision you can make is whether to join the Dark Brotherhood before or after you become Dumbledore. You're a wizard, John Skyrim. In the case of Fallout 3, Todd Howard mentioned that his idea was that when your character finally went out into the outside world, you as a player would also feel, wow, I've really been living in a vault my whole life. Bethesda. Oh, Bethesda! But I don't want to do like Bethesda and pad out this part of the video, so let's move on to giving you tips for this game. Tip number 1. Perception and charisma are useless. Intelligence is the best attribute by far. This applies to New Vegas. Charisma is way worse there as a matter of fact. Tip number 2. Melee weapons are useless. I've specialized in them to see that a broken shotgun did more damage. Don't make the same mistake. Tip number 3. Speed up the game with an external program or download a mode that allows you to sprint. I played with a sped up game for a few hours and they were the most enjoyable ones for me. Walking in this game is horribly slow. So yeah, that would be it. Back to business. Fallout 3 is a very complicated game. As a YouTuber Many a True Nerd said, the story of Fallout New Vegas takes you on a tour literally all over the map. This design is cool, a classic, because you encourage the player to discover everything the game has to offer. This is not to say that the design of Fallout 3 is necessarily bad. Fallout 3's story takes you to the southern half of the map, leaving you more than half of the game's content outside of it. It's a design that requires you to explore on your own to find all those very cool quests that the story just ain't gonna take you to. Very cool quests indeed, with which I and many other players have had a better time than following Father's steps, literally. So let me tell you about the side quests before moving on to the main quest. Of course, spoilers for these quests, I guess. In one corner of the map is the Republic of Dave, where a dude has gathered a couple nobodies and has declared himself president. You will address me as Mr. President or I will have you executed. His mission is as simple as it is corny. It's election day in the Republic of Dave, and Dave, the only candidate, has summoned his citizens to the polls. That's where you come in. You talk to the neighbors to get them to vote for it not to look like the European elections, and you can convince through the magic skill that solves every problem one of the two lowlifes that have even remotely considered running against Dave. The latter doesn't take it very well if he doesn't get elected, which can only happen if you sneak into the polls and rig them just before he counts the votes, after which he throws a tantrum and goes to form the new Republic of Dave on a bench in the middle of nowhere. Superb. This mission, although admittedly hilarious and very dear to my heart, perfectly represents a popular criticism of Fallout 3, which is that it has an inconsistent tone. Communist! He's a communist! Yeah, Chief, quite. In the main story there are a couple of things that are as serious as they come, and at the same time you have here on the other side of the map an asshole who named a tower he found after him and started charging people to live there, and now to kill time he spends his days quick-scoping the poor cunts he catches walking through the wasteland. You may be surprised, but I usually hate comedy. Games and shows rarely make me laugh outside of Community, and I tend to get angry when they try. But even so, I do find Fallout 3's humor funny on occasions. Within its inconsistency, its tone tends to be goofy, which fits the tone of the second game, which I criticized at length in its respective video. But even if it didn't, I don't know, at least this game does make me laugh. Is it inconsistent? Yeah, definitely, of course. Is it a bad thing? I mean, yeah, kinda, yeah. But I see it mostly as a symptom of Bethesda's development, in which each and everyone does the areas and quests as they please independently. Hey look, like in Fallout 2! And so neither the tone nor the quality of the writing are consistent. For example, you have a vault where its inhabitants were given FEV, the forced evolutionary virus from Fallout 1, which was behind the master super mutants, and now these mutants of the wasteland roam it looking for more virus to infect the human prisoners they capture? All this in order to keep producing more mutants when, remember for the first Fallout that they're sterile, which I mean, I guess these mutants have nothing to do with the ones from the Master's army, but why make an inferior, dumber version of them, otherwise physically identical? To miss completely the point of the first game like Bethesda does with the Brotherhood of Steel? And then you also have goofy shit like the vault full of defective clones shouting, "Ha Gary!" And then you also have Little Lamplight, which I love as an idea. It's cool as hell, and Neverland, a children-only civilization where they kick you out when you enter adolescence, the age from which you start to be able to procreate and generate more children. Where the fuck do all these children come from? Backed on my fanfiction, but Little Lamplight would have worked logically if they allowed the women to stay, if they agree to sleep with the 13 and 14-year-olds to procreate and keep their society alive, and it could be the case that some of these women would behave like spoiled preteens, while others would have formed a ruling council of old women, around which you can have some political intrigue involving the player, as happens in the Returns to the Vault quest, or those of New Vegas in general, which usually do this multiple faction shit to great success. Instead, Little Lamplight, while I love it as a concept, makes no fucking sense, nor does, most famously, building a city around a bomb. There are people who are really pissed off that Bethesda's worlds don't make no sense. I certainly would prefer them to make sense, but I can sacrifice verisimilitude if the idea is cool. And Megaton in particular is really cool in my opinion, built out of garbage like some of the cities in the series, but with a super vertical design which makes it a lot of fun to navigate. I like Rivet City, which is a nightmare to navigate because it's a fucking aircraft carrier, and that's what it is, a city inside a giant ship. And I know San Francisco in Fallout 2 was partly ship-based, but here the city is the ship, and that's fucking awesome. Or like the interaction between Big Town, the teenager village, the Lamplight rejects, Little Lamplight itself, and the slavers of Paradise Falls. Paradise Falls, built on a shopping mall, a cool idea. Paradise Falls, the worst place in the wasteland with the cutest name, ready for you to send kids there to enjoy a long life of slavery. And the interaction between the slavers and the Little Lamplight kids is hilarious, how the former want to enslave the latter, but the Lamplight kids are such tenacious little bastards.
Don't take another step or we'll blow your fucking head off.
Concluding this point, Fallout 3 is full of creativity, even though it recycles elements such as the slavers, the Brotherhood of Steel, or the entire plot of Fallout 2, terribly done Bethesda. Or the super mutants, which again have been degraded from having some pretty smart and cool motherfuckers like Marcus to Lord of the Rings orcs that scream, "It hurts!" while the Brotherhood of Steel shoots at them. Let's talk about the fucking Brotherhood. The canonical ending of the first game narrates how the Brotherhood put an end to the war between mutants and humans, minimizing casualties on both sides. We are also told that they slowly begin to reintroduce their technology in society, so it could be argued that it would make some amount of logical sense that in Fallout 3 the Brotherhood is going all out guns blazing, except Fallout 2 had them decimated against the ropes, and the New Vegas would do kind of the same thing. But even if this weren't the case, here they're just generic heroes fighting generic bad guys who hoard, by the way, bags of human organs for some reason, but nope, we're not gonna talk about the mutants anymore. Fucking Bethesda could have done something interesting with the Brotherhood, and admittedly it created the Outcast, but didn't do much with them, and the little that they did was a goddamn 180 degrees, pretty much completely breaking canon. I fucking hate Fallout for this kind of shit, breaking the canon and lore constantly. This is the worst characteristic of this saga by far. But let's go back to the game, shall we? There are very few of these types of decisions in Fallout 3. There are many choices, but most of them only take effect in one area or add a random encounter to the list of random encounters you may encounter. Like, for example, encouraging the antagonizer to terrorize the wasteland. Let's talk about Superhuman Gambit. You arrive in a town and there's a superhero and a supervillain fighting. The people ask you to get rid of one or both of them. Each of them has a lair, one a cave full of ants and the other a workshop with a secret door in its office, a super cool detail. Both dungeons can be escaped with a skill check, something very rare in Fallout 3 if you don't count the fucking speech checks, and that is incidentally one of the coolest features of New Vegas. The antagonizer's lair can be escaped by lock-picking the back door, and in order to escape the Mechanist's dungeon you'll have to repair the elevator. Once you meet the superhero you can, kill him, come with proof that you've killed the antagonizer, collaborate with him and go kill her side by side, convince him with the magic ability which solves everything to quit his superhero career, use one of two special perks to convince him of the same since he's scaring the people he's trying to protect, or on top of all that, if you are dressed as the antagonizer, he mistakes you for her and you have an epic final showdown, a fight to the death. This interaction didn't need to be in the game, but whoever designed this mission clearly put a lot of care in it. This is the kind of thing that makes me love these games. Admittedly, it's not dramatic or serious, but it's super fun and cool. In the antagonizer's lair you can have the same interactions but in reverse, substituting for example that here you can convince her to leave to go terrorize the wasteland as I mentioned before, or to give up her career as a villain and go live a normal life through, again, speech or information from the neighbors about her real name. Or you can have the resolution that makes this quest one of my favorite quests in the entirety of Bethesda's Fallouts. My top 3 would be, in no particular order, Travel at the Homefront, Election Day and Superhuman Gambit. Back to this particular solution, mirroring that somewhat hidden information to convince the Master in Fallout 1, you have to go to a particular corner of Washington DC to a comic store, a place that no one tells you that it could be in the least related to the quest, read one of the many computer logs and then tell the antagonizer about it. And she has this kind of redemption plot and it's beautiful. As another quest that I particularly like, you have Mr. Lopez, an NPC trying to master the courage to end his life. I wouldn't say this is a tactful and serious approximation to the topic. On the contrary, it's rather played for laughs. You can blame poor Mr. Lopez for his family's death or even shove him yourself. And in true Bethesda fashion, they left you his corpse just hanging there in the water. That's rough, buddy. And for another quest and can have a rough and horrible ending, we got Harold, who appeared briefly in my Fallout 1 and 2 videos, and is back on the other side of the country, and he's been swallowed by a tree, and now his existence is hell because he can't do anything and he's surrounded by a cult of fanatics who won't listen to him. So again, he asks for your help in ending his life.
Would you please kill me?
By now we already have a moral conflict so complex and interesting that it remains a topic of political conversation to this day: euthanasia. Is it ethical to end the life of a person who is very sick and going through horrible and non-treatable pain? What if that person asks for their life to end? What if that person's existence makes so many people happy? As you can see, it's a complex question and any of your answers could be defended as the ethically correct one. Or you can be a sadistic fuck and kill everyone in the grove and then set fire to Harold, who is truly terrified of it. Fuck. I guess that's what it's like to roleplay an evil character. Fallout 3 is absolutely prepared for you to play it like that. It has slavers as a faction you can join, you can go around enslaving children, and as the most infamous example, you can blow up Megaton. Megaton is the most famous thing in Fallout 3. In the first city there's a guy who tells you to blow up the city, and you can do it. You son of a bitch, I'm in. And Tempany Tower becomes your home, and it's awesome. I felt listened and reacted to in this game, but it's also that I've tried to make a character that the game is ready to listen to. In these games and the most RPGs I play for this channel, I always try to play the character that best suits the game. And I knew beforehand that many of the conflicts in Fallout 3 have some generic good resolutions and some real son of a bitch ones, like setting Herald on fire or enslaving children. However, then you run into conflicts like when you go back to Vault 101 or the one in Tempany Tower, which throws you a curveball. The motherfuckers in the tower are racist and thus wanna kill the group of ghouls who are trying to come live in the tower with them. If you ally yourself with the ghouls, you can kill the tower dwellers. If you ally with the tower people, you slaughter the ghouls, which is what I did. As the evil Homer. But the peaceful alternative is the most interesting. You convince the tower inhabitants to welcome the ghouls, and a few days later the new neighbors have butchered the old ones and hidden their corpses in the basement. This quest resembles the one in Junktown in Fallout 1, where you can ally yourself with Donald Trump, a smaller version of him, and who is obviously characterized as the bad guy.
That's easy. I want him dead because he cramps my business.
And supporting this beautiful human being results in the objectively best ending for Junktown. And speaking of Fallout 3 quests that are a reference to the original Fallout, we have Travel on the Homefront, another one of my top 3 quests in this game, and even among the whole saga, I think it's a pretty cool quest. Your friend Amata sends you a radio signal asking for help because her father, or another guy if you killed the Overseer at the beginning, has gone bananas and they're in the midst of a civil war in the vault. It's a 10 out of 10 idea, but it's also executed to perfection. For starters, there are solutions that can't be applied if the Overseer is dead, because the replacement is even more of an asshole and isn't Amata's father, which is an important factor when it comes to de-escalation. None of the diplomatic options work with the new Overseer.
You know what? I hear the last Overseer tried being reasonable about things, and you killed him for his efforts. I think I'll skip the reasonable thing and just kill you now.
Give me a second and I'll talk about these. The mission has 3 resolutions, I guess 4 if you include massacring everyone. These are closing the vault forever and not allowing anyone to enter or leave, opening the doors of the vault so that its inhabitants can trade and interact with the outside world, and encouraging them to move out of the vault and settle elsewhere. Each of these 3 outcomes can be achieved by any means. Starting with the simplest, you can get the inhabitants to leave the vault by hacking the terminal here or by stealing the password from this jerk to deprive these bastards of their precious oxygen. You'll get bad karma as this is objectively evil outcome. But wait, there's more. Once the vault is destroyed, you will be confronted by Amata and the Overseer, and you can lie to both of them using the almighty skill that the other party is to blame. And it's funny how if the Overseer thinks that the rebels chose to destroy the vault rather than stay and live under his rule, he decides to stay in the vault to end his own life. If you instead wish to close the vault and convince the Voltrumites to stay inside, you'll have to start with their leader Amata using the magical speech skill or accessing critical information from the Overseer's computer regarding the fact that the Enclave is looking for them, which is extremely dangerous because the last time they enter an inhabited vault they did this. And by explaining it to Amata, she will understand and cease hostilities. Similarly, on the opening the vault path, there's a piece of information that will make the Overseer give up, and that is that his officers plan to massacre the enemy faction behind his back, so he will understand that he's failing to maintain order. And then again, you can just use the speech skill again. The magic of this quest is that it's a reference to the first game, but as I don't want to fuck it up because, in my opinion, it's the best moment of the entire saga, I'm going to recommend you to play Fallout 1 or watch my video. You miss the experience, but it takes less time, and I put it together so that those who don't want to play the game can enjoy its ending. Here it is, okay? Moving on with the quest and with Fallout 1 spoilers. The ending of the first Fallout consists of the Overseer kicking you out to keep the vault safe, sealed shut. Not only Travel on the Homefront poses the same question, whether the inhabitants of a vault are safer in a closed or open vault, but in several of the outcomes the Overseer will refer to the last absolute legend of a line of Fallout 1.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
You're a
You're a
hero.
hero. and
you have to leave.
This quest is a love letter to the ending of the first Fallout, and it's especially great because it lets you choose for yourself what is the best way to run a vault, a decision that the first game took away from you. And I don't mean this in a bad way, the ending of Fallout 1 is perfect. So let's open the debate. What is the best outcome for the vault? On the one hand, the Vault 101 was designed with the following government experiment in mind, keeping a society locked up indefinitely. And everybody gangsta until you realize that the goal of this experiment is for the inhabitants of the vault to end up sleeping with siblings and cousins, producing even more degenerate offspring.
Degenerate male.
Closing the vault has these consequences, and the Overseer himself knows it, that they are probably the one last good generation. On the other hand, if you kick everyone out, you apparently find their corpses around the wasteland, and there is a random event in which the Enclave interrogates Amata about the location of her vault and kills her. And this is the crux of the matter of closing the vault. The Enclave is out there, waiting, watching. Opening the doors to the Enclave means genocide, experimentation and torture. Closing the vault means incest and a slow, intergenerational, agonizing death. And leaving the vault, according to the game, is the objectively evil option. So what the hell you do? What's best for the vault? It's not a rhetorical question. If you have an answer, I'd like to know. Write it down in the comments, because this dilemma, remember, according to many this is a game without any ethical nuances, has left me drawing a blank. I suppose that if someone were to destroy the Enclave, the inhabitants of the vault would no longer have a problem opening it, since in any other circumstance they would not be in danger, although sooner or later the bloodthirsty mutants would come to kill them in search of the FEV. The world of Fallout is very dangerous. Is it really the best idea to open the vault? It's such a banger of a quest. A bit of a pity that Bethesda would go on to design so few of these kinds of quests going forward. But back to the ethical complexity, I don't know about you, but I think this game has decisions, and some of them are very difficult. All the quests I've told you about are pretty cool, and it's true that I've played my fair share of bad ones, but mostly the time I've spent in the side quests has been pretty great. However, that was, 10 hours out of the 55 that took me to beat the game? Unfortunately, Fallout 3 consists of more than these cool side quests, as you have a combat that is abysmal, a world as immense as it is empty, ready to waste dozens upon dozens of your hours, and a main story that is a fucking mess, and it's time to cover it. I guess spoilers for the story, though I don't think it's worth your time anyway. Fallout 3's story is about finding your father, and to do so you have to participate in a series of fetch quests. Fetch as in asking a dog to fetch you a stick you've just thrown away. And that is what you do in many RPG quests and every quest ever designed in MMOs. And that's what you do in the main quest of this game. Yes, your father was indeed here, but is no more. Do a crappy dungeon or pass a speech check and I'll tell you where he went. Hello, we are the generic Brotherhood and we're here to fight the bad guys. Yes, your father was indeed here, but is no longer. Do a crappy dungeon or pass a speech check and I'll tell you where he went. Yes, your father was indeed here and went that away. Yes, your father is a dog. Wait, what? Welcome to Tranquility Lane, the very best of what 1950s American suburbs have to offer. Get to know your many neighbors and the many more ways to hurt them. Among the various activities to do in Tranquility Lane is making a child cry either through physical violence, convincing him that his parents are getting a divorce because of him, or stealing a military badge to make him think his parents are taking him to a military summer camp. But why not kill his parents directly? Less paperwork, huh? As for the next activity, you can induce the divorce of this happy couple by killing the husband's mistress using the wife's rolling pin for the husband to leave her, believing her to be crazy, or placing the mistress's underwear on the husband's desk so that the wife will leave her because of the cheating. Or you can press the magic button until you get it. But don't worry, because the next task can't be solved like that. You have to kill this lady in creative ways, like sabotaging her oven to set her on fire, or placing a skateboard on the stairs to make her sleep, or throwing a chandelier on her, or hacking a kitchen robot to set the poor rats on fire. And if all that suffering wasn't enough, don't worry, because you can take a knife and a hockey mask.
Do you want to see my new chainsaw and hockey mask?
And butcher them all. Bim bim bim. Bim bim bum bim. Bida bum 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 bottom. Bim bim. Bim bim bum 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 bum. Or rather, you can invoke the Chinese army to kill them all, which is considered by the game as the good option. But is really killing all these people and condemning their torturer to wander for eternity in an empty limbo a good deed? Although the same eternity of torture is what awaits those poor souls if you play along with Mr. Brown. Yet another example of difficult decisions and multiple ways to solve quests. This is what the series should aspire to be, and miles ahead of most main quest missions on this saga. Way to go, Bethesda. But don't you worry, it's all downhill from here. So yeah, both you and James come out of the simulation and finally meet.
Son, you've saved me. I was afraid I'd be trapped in there forever.
But there's no time to waste as he's very focused on his project. Turns out a few years ago, he, your mother, and a group of scientists were working on the so-called Project Purity, which was investigating a way to purify irradiated water from the wasteland to give its members access to clean drinking water. However, when your mother died delivering you, father left everything behind and raised you inside the vault until you grew old enough to take care of yourself, and he felt he could pick up where the project left off without explaining anything to you for some reason. To cleanse the wasteland he needs the Gek, the same MacGuffin Fallout 2 used, and I could be fine with this recycling and accept it as lore consistency or something like that, but the problem is that later Fallout 3's story recycles not only the villains of Fallout 2 but also most of the plot. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. You accompany your father to Rivet City. There his scientist peers start up Project Purity again and ask you to clean out their base of operation of, you guessed it, generic mutants, after which you have to perform a series of fetch quests as monotonous as they are repetitive, until in one of them you discover that the Enclave has broken into the facility to take control of Project Purity. So you go as fast as you can, which is very fucking slowly, to meet your father, who, faced with the demands of the Enclave, decides to sacrifice himself to take them out and thus prevent them from monopolizing the drinking water of the wasteland. And one could argue that the Enclave just wants to put a label on the water purifier, and this argument can also be applied to Fallout New Vegas, where the factions vying for the Hoover Dam just want to put a label on it. The reality is that controlling a resource like drinking water gives you an enormous amount of power. One could argue that in Fallout 3 giving the Enclave a water monopoly isn't such a bad idea if it means ceasing hostilities and letting the remains of the US government handle things. I mean, better to have clean water in the hands of the Enclave than for no one to have it, right? Well, no, wrong, because for starters, as soon as they have control of the water supply, they can poison it, which is in fact what President Eden wants to do. But above all, what is a priority is that control over drinking water gives them, to some extent, control over life and death, and you can't give these motherfuckers control over life and death, because when they have had that control in the past, they have resorted to killing and torturing. It makes perfect sense that such an organization would want to take over Project Purity, and it makes even more sense that everyone who defends the interest of the people of the capital wasteland would want to stop them at all costs, and that's why your father sacrifices himself. The plot twist of the protagonist's father dying is extremely common, but what can I say, I liked it here. I had grown fond of James, and seeing him die made me quite sad. And then I watched him perform post-mortem homosexual sex with a colonel. Perhaps that's the real reason Jonas was dead at the beginning of the game. The next thing is to escape with a scientist, and I would like to point out that if you hack this terminal before Dr. Lee and open the door, she doesn't notice and hacks it again. So yeah, you arrive at the base of the Brotherhood of Steel, the Citadel, because now the Brotherhood are the good guys and they offer to help, but you need to take the MacGuffin first. But before you reach it, you get kidnapped by the Enclave and find out that Colonel Autumn is still alive? How the hell is he alive but not my dad? They were literally inches apart. But hey, excuse me, huh? That he stuck a syringe in himself while irradiating a mysterious substance that neither is mentioned nor do you have at your disposal for the endgame, where you literally have to go through the same thing. I mean, I guess it's just right away, but if it is, why can't you just use it to survive the endgame? Why doesn't your dad got some of him? They are top scientists working with irradiated water. A bit of a stretch to believe that not a single one of them carried right away, but the fucking Enclave did? So yeah, back to the Enclave base. Autumn is torturing you, but you're saved by John Henry Eden, the President of America. America. Whose sweet, sweet voice you may have been listening to over the radio. In my case, that was the only sweet, sweet voice on offer, since in my evil roleplay I killed 3 dogs as soon as I met him. And President Eden became my only radio announcer. In another shocking revelation, the President turns out to be an artificial intelligence.
You, however, are not many people.
NANI?
and it asks you to spread FEV to wipe out the mutants. The same thing the Enclave wanted in the previous game. Okay. At least this game lets you choose for yourself and give the victory to President Richardson's Enclave. This outcome is the bad ending, despite the fact that the mutants of the Wasteland are the absolute bad guys, and eliminating them so effectively, even sacrificing the innocent ghouls that would also perish, could be argued to be the lesser evil. But I have to admit that I accepted his request not to save the Wasteland but to condemn it. Incidentally, you can press the magic button. I like your funny words, Magic Man! And the President will commit seppuku along with the Enclave base. But the worst is yet to come. Fallout 3 is ending. The good guys decide to retake the headquarters to take control of Project Purity and send the Homelander robot to do its thing.
Destroy all communists. Democracy is non-negotiable. Death is a preferable alternative to communism.
If you want, you can even try to participate too, but don't even think about entering the fray. They'll kill you faster than the Colonel uttering his epic final battle line. Don't miss it. You clear corridors of enemies with your companion and Paladin Sarah Lyons until you reach the room where your father gave his life to stop this man, who upon seeing you says, "You again." And then you literally shoot him 3 times and there you go, roll credits. Or you can give him a chance and spare his life, which is perhaps a bit empty considering the number of soldiers you've slaughtered just for following his orders. Besides, I don't know why you'd want to spare him. Bethesda's writers haven't bothered to characterize him in the slightest. The character has absolutely nothing going on, no nuance, no purpose, no motivation. He's just the bad guy, I guess. So we're not going to give him any more time in this video than Emil Pagliarulo, Bethesda's head writer, gave him. After killing the cardboard cutout, you're faced with the fact that in order to purify the water, you have to get into the irradiated capsule, presumably with your father's corpse still in there, and do something. But if you do that, you will die. But you could be accompanied by a radiation-immune mutant who in fact already got into an irradiated place to help you earlier in the story. But no, that just happened to be your destiny. Go on, go inside and die. In a later DLC, Bethesda fixed the ending and these radiation-immune companions do get in to save the day. But I usually try in these videos to play without DLCs nor mods. So in the base game you can't get these companions to help you, nor can you heal yourself with Run Away like the Colonel did earlier. You can either sacrifice yourself or let Sarah Lyons take your place. Women in my video games. Anything goes to further the woke agenda. What's next? Blacks? Homos? Politics has no place in video games, especially Fallout. Sacrificing Lyons Jr. is the objectively evil choice and therefore makes you a fucking monster regardless of whether you sneak the killer virus into the purifier just before. The Wasteland Kid traveled and did things. Bad things. Like blowing up Megaton. That's something the kid did, which was really messed up. And then we wanted him to sacrifice himself, and he didn't do it because he's selfish. War never changes. What the fuck is this shit? Did nobody come up with anything better, or did the other writers, the ones who made the side quests, come up with better things but Emil Pagliarulo didn't let them talk? These are baseless accusations, but what is undeniable is that at this point in time there were good writers and designers in this team, and then there were, the rest. The ones who think it's enough to put generic characters without characterizing nor developing them at all in a story very inspired by the previous Fallout and that perhaps has one of the weakest video game endings I've played recently, among the likes of Stay or Dear Fucking Esther. Endings that admittedly are not aberrantly horrible but are definitely mediocre, bland and uninspired, so as to make you say, okay, all the time I've spent here has been for this. Now that I'm done and I have enjoyed the whole experience, has it been worth my time?
No! 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 Joder! No! 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 No!
It would be very appropriate to just end the video here because this meme is an exaggeration of how I felt after finishing Fallout 3. But before I go, I still have to show you Todd Howard, a liar, claiming that Fallout 3 has more than 200 endings.
As of last week, we're over 200 endings. That is not an exaggeration. Yeah, you're like 200 endings. a lie of some kind.
It's a lie!
I believe what he meant was that technically two identical games in which, for example, in one you let the slavers live and in another you don't, have different endings, quote unquote. But I don't care. For me it's still a lie, so Todd Howard is a liar and will spend an eternity selling you Skyrim. But still, none of these endings are good, quite the opposite. I mean, no Fallout ending comes even remotely close to the first one, so it's not like Fallout 3's ending, it's orders of magnitude more disappointing. At the time, Fallout 3 was the darling of gamers, especially of critics. Fallout 3 was the overdog, the Chad, the quarterback who steals your girlfriend and whom everyone praises and admires. And admittedly, given how few people knew how good the previous games were and that Fallout New Vegas' reception was far poorer, I can well understand why the most dedicated fans still hate Bethesda's games to this day. But in my case, my hatred for Bethesda comes more from the fact that they spit in the previous lore, and the show is by far and away the most infamous example, although this may not be Bethesda's fault necessarily, and from the fact that this is just another empty open world game that just so happened to be released in a period in which open world games were the exception and not the rule. There are very legitimate reasons among those they wield, like the poor quality of the writing in some places, but it's also true that many side quests and even parts of the main quest are among my favorite content in the whole Fallout saga. Of course, I would have loved for this game to be an RPG instead of an open world first-person shooter with RPG elements. Makes me wonder how right this post from 20 years ago was. Fallout is gonna be picked by a new team when Black Isle finishes milking the Infinity Engine, and it will be a pathetic and inspired piece of shit developed by half a dozen entry-level coders in 6 months who get their marching orders from a marketing drone. Fallout was a labor of love. That's the only way great games get made, and a sequel done by different people will never do it justice. If you want my opinion, there are parts of this game that are awesome and that the haters willingly ignore. Likewise, the story has many blunders willingly ignored by critics/journalists with little, if any, knowledge of writing. But you know what I've come to hate the most? The fact that the original creators, Troika, tried to acquire the Fallout IP and develop Fallout 3, but fucking Bethesda outbid them and robbed us of a continuation of the saga that wouldn't break canon, would have been far better written, far smarter, more creative, would have been an RPG with choices, different builds, different outcomes, and who knows, perhaps 200 different endings. In an alternative reality, Troika would have bought Fallout and achieved the financial success they so sorely needed to stay afloat. Who knows, perhaps the industry would have pivoted toward real role-playing games rather than tedious open-world games. But I guess we'll never know. At least Bethesda's acquisition would lead to Fallout 4, which is a game I enjoyed playing, despite being even less of an RPG, and especially to Fallout 7 and Fallout New Vegas, which is by far the better game and the direction the saga should have taken. And if you wanna know why, as soon as I have it, I'll leave you its video here. In the meantime, my next project's finally gonna be Witcher 2, one of my favorite games of all time. Hope to see you there as well. Take care. See ya!